With Patriot stocks running low and Ukraine still under pressure, is Zelensky now only riling up Putin even further by striking back at Russian assets at sea? Did Zelensky just sink a Russian civilian ship and, in doing so, invite Putin's renewed fury all over again? Is Ukraine now hitting Putin's sea lifeline with homegrown strike weapons, showing it can still reach Russian targets despite its air defense shortages? After enraging Putin at sea, is Zelensky now turning back to the West and begging for more help before Russia's next response lands? On August 1st, Zelensky said Ukraine sank the sanctioned Russian ship Yanina in the Black Sea, adding a new flashpoint to the war at sea. According to Kyiv Independent, the strike used Ukraine's indigenous middle strike weapons, highlighting the country's growing homegrown attack capability. Zelensky said, and I quote, "Grateful to Ukrainian warriors who are bringing the war back to Russia and responding to its attacks against life. Our targets are consistently defined facilities that sustain the war effort. Middle strikes were carried out overnight, with successful hits in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. A sanctioned Russian container ship, Yanina, sailing under the Russian flag and with a capacity of more than 100,000 tons, was also struck. Thanks to the precision of our defense forces, it was sent to the bottom. Also overnight, Security Service of Ukraine units struck the infrastructure of 3 Russian oil refineries in Bashkortostan. The targets were nearly 1,600 kilometers away. These refineries process millions of tons of oil each year. We continue applying our just pressure. Our long-range sanctions plan is being implemented step by step." Unquote. Rosatom claimed the vessel was carrying civilian goods and condemned the attack as piracy, making the strike politically explosive as well as militarily significant. The latest attack came after Russia launched a massive aerial assault on Ukraine, setting off another cycle of escalation and retaliation. Volodymyr Zelensky renewed his plea for Western air defenses after the deadly Russian barrage, warning that Ukraine urgently needs more protection. The president warned that Russia's attacks were exposing Ukraine's shortage of Patriot interceptors, leaving the sky dangerously vulnerable. His plea came just hours after Trump backed away from letting Ukraine build Patriot missiles, deepening the uncertainty around future supplies.
Mr. President, on Ukraine, you said the other day that you're not sure about whether to grant Ukraine the Patriot missile license that had been discussed. Do you want to see more from Zelensky before you take that action?
Well, it's a big step. Look, we have the greatest weapons in the world. We have the greatest drones in the world. People don't know that. We have the greatest weaponry in the world. We have, in the case of President Zelensky, he'd like to have some Patriots. He'd like to have some Tomahawks, which are, lethal, one offensive, one defensive. But when you give somebody the right, very complex weapons, by the way. I mean, the Patriot, as an example, the other day you read that 5 missiles were shot. They were going 8,600 miles an hour. Think of it, 8,600. Now a car, if you go 60, it gets to be a little faster. If you go 100, 8,600 miles an hour. And they were big missiles. And they were shot at Jordan. And our guys were there. Bing, 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 bing. 5. Bing, 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 bing. Right? I don't want to be biting. 6. I had to be very careful. That would have been a great sound bite. Right? There were 5 missiles, and we shot all 5 down before they got close. Nobody else has that capacity. These weapons are incredible. We have to be very careful about letting somebody build them. It's very important now. We are building many plants now to make those, and the Tomahawk missile is the most incredible thing. It can go into a doorway. You can put it through a window of a house. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. You have to be very judicious, but you have to be very careful. Now, we have not agreed to that. We're talking about it, but it's a hard thing to give away that kind of technology. And I don't think this would ever happen, but those people that you give that technology, they can someday turn on you. That is possible. If you look at war, it's happened a couple of times over the years, right? So we have to be very careful. I mean, we guard that. We have the greatest military in the world, but we have the greatest weapons in the world. Now we have to make them a little bit faster because we've given a lot away. President Biden, unfortunately, gave a lot away to Ukraine. And he gave, so did I. I mean, I gave them the javelins, the tank busters. Without the javelins, that war would have been a one-day war. It would have been over. The wiped out the tanks going up to Kyiv, where they got stuck in the mud. They had a general that decided to go through the mud instead of going up the highway where they were going very nicely. It would have been over. But no, I gave them the javelins. The javelins are unbelievably. We have the greatest weapons in the world. We have to be very careful about giving out the secrets to those weapons. And they're not, you can't copy them. It's a little like NVIDIA. They have a chip. They say you cannot copy it. The complexity is so great you cannot. You know, most things you copy. China's known for it, other countries, we do something, and I guess we copy also. But most things you can copy pretty easily. There's a chip that they made, their ultimate chip, and they always have the ultimate chip. And I say, well, why doesn't somebody copy it? Because they can't, the complexity. They can't copy our weapons. We have the greatest weapons in the world, many of them. Those are just 2 or 3 that I mentioned, but you cannot copy them, so we have to be very careful.
That shift marked a sharp change from Trump's NATO summit remarks supporting local production, leaving Kyiv with even more questions about Washington's next move. Zelensky warned that Patriot systems are needed here and now, not left sitting in warehouses while Russian missiles keep falling. Zelensky said, and I quote, "Overnight, the Russians launched 35 missiles at Ukraine, including 27 ballistic missiles, as well as 185 attack drones of various types. Kyiv was the primary target, but strikes also hit the Dnipro, Sumy, Kharkiv, and Poltava regions. Only 1 ballistic missile was intercepted, simply because there are no interceptors for the Patriot systems. And it is this shortage of ballistic missile interceptors that only encourages Russia to launch such attacks that take human lives. It is critical that partners hear that these capabilities are needed not somewhere in stockpiles for hypothetical scenarios, but here and now, to contain and stop the Russian war in Ukraine. Every package of ballistic missile interceptors saves the lives of our people, and every night without them results in more casualties." Unquote. Russia launched its second major missile attack on Ukraine in just 48 hours, marking another significant escalation in the ongoing conflict and intensifying pressure on the country's air defenses. Multiple ballistic missiles struck Kyiv during the early hours of August 1st, triggering air raid alerts and sending residents rushing to shelters across the Ukrainian capital. At least 9 people were killed and 23 others were injured in the overnight attack, according to Ukrainian officials, as emergency teams continued search and rescue operations. Fires and extensive damage were reported across at least 5 districts of Ukraine's capital, with residential buildings and civilian infrastructure among the affected sites. Kyiv's Darnitsky district suffered the highest casualties, with 7 people reported killed as the missile strikes caused widespread destruction in the area. 14 people, including 2 children, were injured in the Darnitsky district, where emergency responders treated the wounded and searched damaged buildings for survivors. The attack came after Ukraine's Air Force warned that multiple ballistic missiles were heading toward Kyiv, urging residents to remain in shelters as the threat unfolded. Explosions rocked the capital in several waves throughout the night, as successive missile strikes shook different parts of the city over a prolonged period. Russian missiles struck apartment buildings, warehouses, a car wash, and a parking area, causing significant destruction to both residential and commercial properties. Several buildings partially collapsed during the attack, trapping residents beneath debris and prompting urgent rescue efforts by emergency services. Firefighters and emergency crews were deployed to multiple impact sites across Kyiv, working to extinguish fires, rescue survivors, and assess the extent of the damage. Fires were reported in the Darnitsky, Shevchenkivsky, Solomyansky, and Holosivsky districts, as authorities responded to multiple emergencies across different parts of the capital. The latest strike followed another massive Russian missile barrage just 2 days earlier on July 30th, underscoring the sustained pace of attacks targeting Ukraine's capital. A mass Russian aerial attack on Ukraine overnight on July 30th killed at least 8 civilians and injured more than 50 others as missiles and drones struck multiple regions. Air raid alerts were issued in eastern Poland after a Russian missile crossed into Polish airspace and fell into a field in Lublin Voivodeship, prompting NATO to condemn the strike as reckless. Damage and casualties were reported in cities across Ukraine, including Kyiv and Lviv, where residential buildings, schools, and other civilian infrastructure were hit. In one of the attacks, a Russian ballistic missile destroyed a U.S. firm's Kyiv drone factory, wiping out a key site in Ukraine's unmanned systems production. The strike on the terminal autonomy plant appeared to be the first time in the war that Moscow has directly targeted a US-registered company inside Ukraine. The US-owned drone factory in Kyiv was destroyed by a Russian ballistic missile, leaving the facility in ruins but causing no deaths at the site. Terminal Autonomy makes precision deep strike drones with systems designed to resist Russian jamming signals, including the AQ-400 Scythe and AQ-100 bayonet models. According to The Guardian and other reports, both AQ-400 Scythe and AQ-100 bayonet drones are part of the plant's product line, giving Ukraine long-range strike options that challenge Russia's air defenses. A former US intelligence officer said Russians don't care who owns the manufacturing facility, viewing any plant that supports Ukraine's war effort as a legitimate target regardless of its corporate home. Notably, nobody was killed in the Russian attack on the drone factory, with sources familiar with the company confirming the building was empty when the missile hit.